Hello.
Yay! Look at this. This is so much fun. So, who are you?
My name is Cheryl McMillan, and I am the program manager of our peer support services at CMHA Grey Bruce. So that includes our peer support, which is someone who can support you who has their own lived experience. So they also have a component of training that they have gone through, whether it be secondary or post-secondary education, as well as some peer support specific training, but they use that as well as their lived experience to support those who are going through a similar journey.
I love that.
We also have our family support, who also are peer support workers. So they too have supported either a family member or a loved one through a mental health or addiction struggle, and then in turn use that lived experience to support other families or loved ones who are going through something similar.
Which is amazing.
Yes, so then we also have our CNST, which is our information and referral, as well as a resource lending library that is open to the general public. And that has books and videos and lots of other resources on the topics of mental health and addiction.
Which is amazing. And it's all under this massive umbrella called
the Community Network Support Team.
Yay!
Yeah, so sometimes we do refer to it as CNST for short form. We also, some of our peer programs, our peer and family also have short names. So CSDP, which stands for the Consumer Survivor Development Program, which is kind of confusing for some, because when they hear the name Consumer Survivor, sometimes they think of consumer as in buying goods, those types of things. But it's actually a historic name that means I have consumed the mental health system as well as survived it. So it's got some meaning to that movement. And then for our family support, we use the FSI, which is Family Support Initiative.
So great. So
Yeah.
I think when people think of peer support, one, sometimes they don't think about it, which is they don't recognize that it's available. They don't recognize that it can help. And I think sometimes too, the disconnect is they don't understand how it's different than counseling. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So kind of like I mentioned, we used our lived experience. So sometimes, you know, it's great that we have our counselors and our therapists and our doctors to create our support network, to create our support team. But, you know, I go back to an instance when I first became a mom. I went out and I talked to my other mom friends to find out, oh, did you do this? How did you feel about that? And it's kind of the same for peer support, but in the mental health and addiction realm. So someone who maybe is trying a new medication or trying to navigate through the system, you know, we can't always rely on those professional supports because they're so busy supporting wonderful people in the community. So it's nice that they can get matched to a peer support worker, can kind of help them kind of go through finding out, well, what does my diagnosis mean? You know, where do I go for support? Who do I talk to? And just also about setting kind of a recovery plan or recovery goals to kind of figure out, well, this is what I'm struggling with. Maybe getting out of bed in the morning is really, really hard. You know, well, maybe I can talk to my peer support worker about that. What did they do? What helped them get through it? And so we also offer some support groups. So it's just a place where people can gather together who have similar experiences or shared experiences, and they can talk about some of these things and figure out then what's going to work for me.
I often think of it as a come as you are type of gathering. Yes,
absolutely.
And when you think about that recovery goals, there's even a formal way of kind of going through that process under the CNST umbrella as well, called the WRAP program.
Yes. So WRAP is an amazing program that is throughout the whole world. It is an evidence-based best practice, but one thing I really like about it is that it's created by peers or people with lived experience and then delivered by people with lived experience. So it's someone who is sharing their own experience, and the WRAP program, which is Wellness Recovery Action Plan, is an 8-week session once a week, and we are now doing that over Zoom as well. And it's just a way for people to kind of get together and figure out, what do I need to do daily for my wellness? Because there's certain things you have to do maybe within the week that help, like maybe paying bills or going grocery shopping, but there's going to be some specific things that you need to do every single day, like maybe take medication, make your bed, pet your dog, go for a walk, those sorts of things. So it's just a way for us to kind of figure out what you need to do daily. But then we also create a wellness toolbox. So if you think of a worker man or a worker woman who has a hammer does a certain job and a wrench does a certain job. So wellness tools have certain functions that they do. So if you go to Walmart and you are starting to feel a little bit of anxiety, what are some things that you can do on the go that can help make you feel better? And so you are kind of creating your toolbox and then kind of matching it to triggers or early warning signs. And we even talk about what it's actually like to break down, and then we crisis plan. And so when you have a well thought out, created plan, it does give you comfort, and then it also gives you some confidence and empowerment to then go out and try. Well, maybe I can go to Walmart and feel like I have those tools in my toolbox to kind of to get through and manage. So yeah, it's a wonderful program. We do tend to have a little bit of a waiting list for that, but that just proves how wonderful the program is. We have done no real advertising for it. It's all been word of mouth. People come back and they take it as many times as they want. We actually have one guy who's taken it 9 times. Yeah, and he uses it for his recovery from substances. So every time he takes it, he's in a different place, and that's okay. And then he can also offer such support to other group members.
But once again, come as you are,
yeah.
Right? And come in whatever stage of recovery you're in.
Yeah, we meet you where you're at, because, you know, every day I wake up, I'm at a different place of readiness. You know, Monday mornings are always a little bit harder. So, you know, I'm going to be at a different place then, where on Friday afternoons, I might be in a little bit more of a peppy place. So it all depends, and we definitely meet you where you're at.
And I love when you talk about that you're meeting and you're doing these programs by Zoom. So there has been a real switch in the last 10 months in how we offer these services. Like you think, if I think 2 years ago and we said, oh, we're going to run one of the wraps virtually, we would have like, no, like we wouldn't have thought it was possible. 2, we wouldn't have thought anybody would be interested in it. Absolutely. And then look at us. And I just, to me, it's one of the biggest positives of all of this.
Yeah. Well, and if you think of it, especially in our area living in Grey and Bruce, we have such a large geographic area. And for us in peer support, we have a very small program. So we do have community resources like community workers, but we also have a peer and a family worker that are stationed at the Owen Sound site of Grey Bruce Health Services. So if people are wanting to come in and get support there, they can access peer support, they can access family support. All they have to do is ask the nurse when they go up to the emergency department. But going back to what you said about doing Zoom, because we have limited resources and limited peer staff, it is sometimes difficult to get to some of those outlining areas. Like Kincardine, it's hard to get there in the winter. But having Zoom as an option, or Teams, or whatever platform that you're using, you can access some of those smaller areas with a much more ease. Of course, as long as the person has those resources. And if they don't, then we call us and we can figure out some ways, because there's lots of resources out there that we can shift around.
Which is so incredible, right? Like it just takes away so many barriers that maybe existed before. I work till 4 and I can't get to that site by 4:30, or you know, this month I couldn't getting gas in my car was really tricky. And so I think that just opens a lot of doors for some more folks who maybe historically couldn't take the programs for geographic reasons, and
or who struggle leaving their house.
Right.
I know a lot of people do have anxiety, and coming into a room full of people, and you know, just having that energy in the room sometimes is just enough to trigger, you know, having a little bit of panic. So having a place where you can come in and you're seeing, yes, faces on a screen, it's sometimes less intimidating to folks because they don't have that energy of the room. So
Right.
we've had some good feedback from folks that way. It is a little less personable because you are talking to a screen, but people have been amazing and offering lots of suggestions and feedback. And we do welcome that as a peer program because we love to learn from the people who are going through the experience. And so we always love to have people kind of give us information or feedback around what's working, what's not working. That's one really good thing about having a peer program. We don't have a lot of restrictions and guidelines that we have to kind of mold ourselves around. We can be really flexible and going back to really meeting people where they're at. So pre-COVID, you know, that might mean, hey, you don't really feel comfortable coming into an office? Well, let's go for a walk, or let's meet down at Harrison Park and, you know, walk and see the ducks. So I'm really hopeful that after COVID that we can pivot a little bit more back to doing some more of that in person. We do still see people in person right now because, you know, whatever the need is at, if the person is really needing it, then that's what we do.
Because we fall under that essential service umbrella, so there's flexibility that way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I love too how you talk about navigation of services. So I know on one side it can be really confusing to people to find the right service because there can be so many services. On the other side, that's a benefit in finding the right fit for you because there is so many services. So you know how sometimes we look at it, oh my gosh, the list of things I could do is so long, but you know what, if this wasn't a good fit and that hammer didn't work and that wrench didn't work, have you tried the screwdriver, right? So it's about and I love that there's somebody there who's like, well, this is how it benefited me, or this is what I took out of that service. So that can be such a huge support to people.
Yeah. And, you know, I myself sometimes still get confused with the system. It is a big system. And like you said, there's so many facets to it, knowing what is the best fit and where to go and when. And sometimes just having somebody to walk along that journey with you to say, okay, here are your options. You then need to kind of figure out what's best suited for you, but I can help you do that. And we can kind of help, okay, like you said, maybe this isn't the right one, but let's try another. And when you're not at your best, that's very overwhelming. So to have a peer do that with you is really essential. And so we work in tandem with some of those other services that we talked about before, about like nurses and housing workers and outreach. So just because you have one of those workers doesn't mean you can't have a peer support worker. We work in tandem and help support each other to really kind of give that wraparound team approach.
Which is awesome, which is so great. So again, you're like this well-kept secret of a service that literally can be whatever that individual needs it to be, because the ultimate goal is wellness for all of our folks in Grey and Bruce.
Yeah, and we are really lucky in Grey and Bruce that our mental health and addiction sector has fully accepted peers as part of that system. I get calls from, you know, the hospital, family doctors, lots of different types of services throughout Grey and Bruce, just asking, you know, what could this be benefit to the person that they're working with. So if anybody ever has any questions or anything, please give us a call, and we would love to chat with you.
I love that. I love that. And Dr. Vikram Patel, I got to hear him speak a couple of CMHA conferences ago, and he said, you know, it's interesting. He said, people think, you know, sometimes that, oh, we need more, you know, psychiatrists, or he said, no, he's like, we need more peer support, because if you think of 20 people around every one person, if 10 of those individuals understood mental health or had been on their own mental health journey, we're more likely to recognize that journey in somebody else, and we're more quickly to jump in and offer some guidance and an ear. And he said, so, you know, expanding the number of people in those 20 around every one person is our biggest asset.
But it's also really good for, you know, people who've come through the program who are now at a good place, who then want to turn around and give back because they've seen how essential having that person who had that shared experience was to them. So we do get lots of people contacting us, how can I give back? And, maybe helping them tweak their story on how to share it in an effective way. So peer support, I look at, well, if you think of, that old saying, it takes a village to raise a child, kind of the same, it does take support. It does take a village to help someone through mental health and addictions. And who best to have than someone who's already gone through that themselves and knows the way out and knows what it feels like to get at a place of wellness again and recovery.
So awesome. So I know when we, speaking of, when you talk about tweaking stories, that's always, I think one of the most important ways to describe a service is, sharing a story of how it just completely changed a life or made such a difference. Or do you have something along that lines that you can share with anybody watching today?
Yes, so many. So on the peer side, this is a above the top story, but I have to share it. So years ago, I was doing a rap group, and this gentleman had been working really hard on trying to figure out, well, what do I need to do? Where's my personal responsibility in my wellness and my healthcare? Yes, I have lots of people who are helping me, but what do I need to do? And this person actually tripped and fell into his pond on his property, and it was in the winter, and he was struggling and not doing well. But he said, all I could think of was that message in rap, what do I need to do to help myself? And he kept playing that over and over in his head, and he called out for help and got help. And he said ever since that day, that's kind of just been his mantra. What can I do? What can I do? Yes, okay, today is hard, and maybe it's just something as small as making my bed, but that's something that I can do. And so how empowering for somebody to go through a program and really self-doubt themselves, go through something horrific and tragic, but really kind of pull themselves out of that and have it turn into such a meaningful part for them in their recovery. And so, you hear of some of this feedback and some of these stories that, it makes the work. It makes the work. And,
good.
If you can just help one person figure out, one little baby step that they can do to help themselves, it's awesome. So family support, it was actually a staff member who recently gave me some feedback. Her husband had come to her saying a coworker of his was struggling, and he didn't know as a friend and coworker really what to do. And so of course he goes home to work and talks to his wife, and she said, well, we have this wonderful program at CMHA called Family Support. Why don't you get in contact with them? So the husband did and got some really good support, but which was really nice, the coworker got in contact with our peer program. So together, they worked together as a team, all of them having some virtual sessions where they could come up with some ideas for while he is at work to support him through the day. And then they also had that point person to come back to. So, sometimes they're one-off sessions, or sometimes it's, I need to check in every month or every week or whatever. So whatever you got to do to get through.
You truly are the best kept secret of Grey Bruce. You really are.
Well, thank you, Jackie.
And I just kind of did a problem with that, because now you're not the best kept secret, because you're no longer a secret, because now everybody's going to see this video and know how awesome peer support is, and a family support initiative is, and the RAP program is, and that there's a library full of information and resources. And so if anybody listening and watching this video on Bell Let's Talk Day is hearing this and going, well, that sounds like it's exactly the perfect fit for me, how would one go about learning more and finding out more?
Well, right now, I'm just going to give our main CMHA line because I know you have noted this in some of your other videos, that You know, we have lots of different numbers for, you know, our addiction, for peer support, for housing, and sometimes it can get confusing and overwhelming for people. So just keeping that in mind, I would just invite them to call our main number, which is 519-371-3642. And we have a wonderful lady, our administrative assistant up front, who can then direct your call.
Jewel is such a jewel.
Yes.
She is amazing. Yes. And then there's always information on our CMHA Grey Bruce Facebook page, where
Yes.
we try and keep that updated as much as we can. And our CMHA website, Grey Bruce website, lists all those different programs and the different phone numbers, so that can be found too. So,
Yep. So lots of groups, lots of resources, one-to-one support, whatever you need, give us a call.
that's amazing. Well, happy Bell Let's Talk Day.
Yay!
Thank you for making this happen.
Thank you for having me, Jackie.
Thank you so much. And thank you to anybody who was watching and listening. And remember, if you can, tweet, text, I think it's Instagram and Snapchat. And I think they even give 5 cents this today for TikTok videos.
Nice. Nice.
A sign that times are a-changing.
Yes.
So, all right. Well, I'm going to sign us off here. And